Time now for last call. Amazing video out of California where a sheriff's deputy traded gunfire with a suspect earlier this week, and it was all caught on her body cam. Watch this.
Shots fired, shots fired.
Authorities confirmed the man, Javier Hernandez Morales, was in the U.S. illegally and actually had been deported 3 times prior to 2011. He died at the scene. Immigration officials said the whole thing could have been prevented, but California's laws stopped them from arresting the Mexican despite his criminal past. That's all for us tonight. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Justice with Judge Jeanine is next. And remember, I'm Waters, and this is my world.
Breaking tonight, Robert Mueller slams Paul Manafort in a sentencing memo made public today. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Katie Pavlich, in for Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks so much for being with us. A big show on deck with a great guest lineup, including former Governor Mike Huckabee, David Bossie, Katrina Pearson, Jason Chaffetz, and Charlie Kirk, to name a few. And a lot to cover tonight as President Trump prepares to head overseas to Vietnam for his second historic summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. The crisis in Venezuela intensifying, and Robert Mueller's sentencing memo on ex-Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, is released. And joining me now with reaction to a lot of the breaking news tonight and more, Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. Congressman, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's good to be with you.
Welcome to the show. All right, so Paul Manafort is getting hammered by the special counsel again. They released the report today saying that he brazenly violated the law both outside of prison and inside of it. What is your reaction tonight to this new sentencing memo?
Well, when we receive the special counsel's report, I think it's very appropriate to evaluate it in context of how it was prepared and who prepared it. You'll remember that the Obama-appointed Democrat Inspector General said that all of the major HR policies had been violated at the FBI and Department of Justice when you saw people move from the Hillary Clinton investigation on to the Robert Mueller investigation. I think it's also important to note that when Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were texting one another about whether or not it would be a wise career move for Strzok to go and work for Bob Mueller, they said there was no there. There was no evidence at all after 10 months of investigating of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And now we see, I think, a special counsel's team that includes a lot of people who were supportive of the Hillary Clinton campaign, who have supported Democrat candidates in the past. And as we look at the findings, we know that this is the result of tens of millions of dollars in taxpayer money that's been spent. But I believe it will take a very negative and unfair view of the president.
Oh, we're certainly waiting on that report, and we know now that it won't be released next week when the president is overseas. But I want to just point out that the sentencing memo talks about Paul Manafort violating a garden variety of crimes such as tax fraud, money laundering, obstruction of justice, and bank fraud. But there's nothing in here that talks about them worried about any kind of collusion, just as the indictment showed before he went through a trial.
You're absolutely right. And these elements with Paul Manafort largely arise either before Donald Trump ever contemplated running for president or so far after Paul Manafort's departure from the campaign that they couldn't be tied to the campaign. But you see these themes with Manafort play out with other characters throughout this entire saga, whether it be Roger Stone or George Papadopoulos. The process crimes are largely what drives the special counsel's activity rather than being able to demonstrate any Americans who were conspiring with Russians and the Trump campaign in order to impact the outcome of the election or to steal emails from Hillary Clinton and her team. So I think that you largely see the special counsel trying to investigate people like Manafort, like Stone, rather than actual crimes like collusion and obstruction of justice.
So speaking of investigations, your colleague, Congressman Adam Schiff, who is in charge now of the House Oversight Committee, was on Bill Maher last night, and I wanted you to take a listen to what he said, and I'll get your reaction.
People will stop me in the corridor, Republicans, and say, keep doing what you're doing.
Really?
Even senior Republicans, which of course would be heresy for them to say publicly, I don't need private confidences, misgivings anymore. We need public statements. We need people to take a stand. We need people to vote their conscience.
Congressman, are Republicans secretly meeting with Adam Schiff in the corners and halls of Capitol Hill to talk about how much they hate President Trump?
Well, there frankly are too many Republicans that I think haven't been vocal enough in support of our president. And I actually believe, Adam Schiff, that there probably are some Republicans who have talked to him and who have indicated that secretly they want a downfall of President Trump. But that's why I love our president so much. He's a disruptive force in Washington for the Republicans and Democrats who in large part work together in an establishment coalition to keep everything the same in this country. But the forgotten men and women of America wanted to see things done differently. That's why they elected Donald Trump. And now you see the establishment of both parties fighting back and allowing these abuses at the FBI and Department of Justice to bias an investigation that never will be able to prove collusion because it didn't happen.
So staying on Capitol Hill, we want to switch gears here a little bit. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is rounding up Democrats to vote for a resolution against President Trump's national emergency. Some Republicans have said they are going to break ranks and vote with them to condemn the national emergency. But my question for you is, does this resolution actually take any power back from the executive? And does it do anything to actually solve the problem of illegal immigration?
Well, this would be what we would call a show vote in Washington. It's a vote that won't result in any change to law or policy, but it allows Nancy Pelosi to virtue signal to the radical left about their open borders, abolish ICE agenda. I would be very disappointed to see Republicans break rank, but at the same time, I mean, we have to acknowledge that this is an emergency. We just seized enough fentanyl at the border to kill 115 million Americans. That's more than a third of our country. And that's just what we caught, Katie. There are enough drugs and gangs and violent people crossing our border to do great harm to the families in the United States of America. And that's why this is an emergency. It's why the president has taken appropriate action. And nothing about this vote will do anything other than signal to the far left of the Democratic base that Democrats still believe in open borders.
Does Congress have any plans? You're there, you're talking to your colleagues about doing something real on illegal immigration. We saw the funding bill, which actually fuels this problem of the crisis of unaccompanied minors and family units and human trafficking at the border. But we see the resolution condemning the president's emergency declaration. Are there really any plans over the next 2 years to tackle this issue from a strictly illegal immigration perspective, not tied to a funding bill?
Well, that is the question that all Americans are asking, Katie. They want to know, after all of this dust-up, are there going to be some common-sense solutions where both parties come together, maybe make a little compromise, and design an immigration system that works for the American economy and the American people? Now, I thought Senator Lindsey Graham was really working hard to do that. He was trying to build a piece of legislation that would have secured our border, built the wall, dealt with the dreamers in a way that was humane but that did not invite more illegal immigration, and then even take a look at those citizens in our country who are here from temporary protected status, people who escaped war or natural disaster, and to find a way for those folks to stay in our country if they follow the laws and if they act legally and properly. And so I think that there were people working on those things, but the barrier to the common sense reforms that most Americans would support is this, really I think, is this view on the left that we have to abolish ICE. Beto O'Rourke saying we have to tear down walls. That's the type of thing that really frustrates common sense progress.
Congressman, real quickly before we have to move on and let you go, you brought to the attention of the American people recently something that House Democrats in the Oversight Committee actually voted against in terms of notifying ICE when illegal immigrants or illegal aliens attempt to purchase guns at American gun stores. Can you quickly explain what that was about?
Yeah, Democrats wanted to expand background checks, and we were working on the elements of that legislation that we liked and didn't. And we simply thought that if an illegal alien goes to buy a gun in this country, that we should notify ICE if the background check shows that. And every single Democrat on the Judiciary Committee voted against notifying ICE when an illegal alien wants to buy a gun to potentially do harm in our country. So it shows that, like, they hate ICE so much on the radical left that they wouldn't even notify ICE if an illegal alien would potentially commit a mass act of gun violence.
That's pretty amazing. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. We appreciate it. Congressman Matt Gaetz, thanks so much.
Thank you, Katie.
All right, joining me now with more reaction to all of the developing news and more, Trump 2020 senior advisor Katrina Pearson and former Trump deputy campaign manager David Bossie. Thanks to you both for being here tonight. Katrina, I want to start with you. President Trump won in part in 2016 because of his strong stance on the border, on national security, and the rule of law when it comes to illegal immigration. This is not going away. How do you feel this is going to play when it comes to 2020?
Well, you know, Katie, you're absolutely right. And I'll just piggyback off of what Representative Gates said about, you know, the messaging that Nancy Pelosi is sending by wanting to somehow stop the emergency action. But I'll take it a step further and say, you know, Nancy calls herself a masterful legislator. This is a messaging resolution, not just to Democrats, though, but also to Republicans who still have not gotten the memo that you just spoke about, who still are not in touch with the base, and get them on the record, because she wants to add to her majority in the House, and they want to take back some seats in the Senate. And it's all on this false narrative that there's a manufactured crisis, when just 2 months ago they were all talking about the crisis we had on the border as the caravan was trying to rush through. There are more on the way. We were just in El Paso, Katie, and I spoke to several citizens who did not support President Trump and who did not support the wall, who all do not want the wall to come down in El Paso. And furthermore, they were dead silent when I asked them why their neighbors just 20 minutes from them did not deserve the same silence.
David, you know, the left for the last 2 years has run and legislated, and they will continue to legislate with Nancy Pelosi in charge on this resistance movement. Nancy Pelosi was in Laredo yesterday saying that the president is abusing his office and disrespecting the presidency by declaring this national emergency. She's now deciding that she's going to put this resolution on the floor. What does this say to you when it comes to actually getting something done on this issue?
Well, they're clearly not interested in getting anything done. This is a show vote, nothing more, nothing less. It does not mean anything except we get to put people on the record, which I appreciate, because in 2020, when we go to reelect President Trump, we're going to be reelecting Republicans and Democrats, and people who vote on the wrong side of this issue are going to be, in danger when it comes to 2020. So I'm excited about this vote. I want to see Republicans, if there are any, and I want to see the Democrats put their money where their mouth is.
All right, I want to switch gears to the news that we got tonight from the Robert Mueller investigation. They have this new sentencing memo for him. We're not going to get that report next week, as previously reported multiple times that this report was coming down. But Katrina, what does this have to do with the president's strategy moving forward if the Robert Mueller investigation doesn't end anytime soon before 2020?
Well, look, I mean, the president has already stated, and many of us agree, that this is essentially the greatest hoax on the American public. I mean, you have a guy that has unfettered power, unfettered access to funds. I do hope they include the amount of tax dollars that it costs once this report does come out. But the president is not concerned about this, Katie, because it has nothing to do with him. It has nothing to do with the campaign strategy. Donald Trump won this election. The left hates it. We are definitely in the age of hoaxes, apparently, all against Trump and Trump supporters. So, again, the left is going to have egg on their face when this report comes out, and the president once again will be vindicated. But this is not the first hoax, and I'm pretty sure this will not be the last. I just hope that people start to pay a script writer, because not even Denzel could pull off some of the latest hoaxes we see out there.
Well, Denzel is a good actor, as we know. David, keep laughing
Exactly.
over there. What's your response?
No, he is a good actor. Look, this is outrageous. Our president is going to Vietnam to negotiate a nuclear deal or an opportunity to make a deal with Kim Jong-un of North Korea, something that the world needs to have happen. This president is going over there to negotiate on behalf of all the American people. It's outrageous that Robert Mueller has not submitted this report and closed it down, because the president doesn't deserve to go to this summit with this hanging over his head. This should be behind us, behind all Americans, and the president should be able to do his job every day without worrying about this really ridiculous now charade of an investigation.
Katrina, it's been interesting to see how the narrative has changed with the Mueller investigation. So Democrats and some Republicans Republicans have gone to great lengths to protect the special counsel. They wanted legislation put on the Senate floor to protect the special counsel. Anytime the president or his supporters questioned Robert Mueller's motives or the people working for him, they were depicted as people who weren't interested in the truth. And now that Robert Mueller doesn't seem to be finding the collusion that Adam Schiff, for example, wants, they're now questioning the credibility and legitimacy of the Robert Mueller investigation and launching their own investigations with subpoenas ready to go.
Well, of course they are. They have to have some type of conspiracy or hoax to continue throughout the election cycle. Leader Kevin McCarthy, tweeted several questions that he has for Adam Schiff, who has been claiming since the beginning that he has evidence of collusion, which, by the way, is not a crime. But here we are again today, several months, probably 2 years now, into this nightmare of a hoax on the American people. But I do think also that this investigation, we'll see just how thorough it was, because we also know that there was a campaign that was in fact colluding with foreign entities, right, and a lot of people involved in the previous administration who were in an act of sedition, if you want my opinion on it. And I think that's what needs to come out of this investigation, too. If you're going to investigate collusion, let's investigate collusion and get on with it.
David, going into the 2020 election, obviously there's going to be a big primary between Democrats. But is this going to be an issue that they try to use against the president, or are they going to realize it's the bottom of the list when it comes to people's priorities, and they want results from the government? They don't want to talk about something that didn't happen.
That's exactly right. This president's going to be able to run on all of his unbelievably successful accomplishments that he's been able to succeed on for the American people, all the American people, unemployment rates, GDP, our national security. But you have the Adam Schiffs of the world. You have the Jerry Nadlers of the world. You have Nancy Pelosi and others in the House that want to have a never-ending investigation. And the American people are tired of it. They want to get back to business. And that is what's important here. We're going to have a little bit of overreach, in my opinion. Congress is going to be able to see for themselves what the American people say. But Democrats in Congress are overreaching. They're going to be in danger. Once this Mueller report comes in, they're going to, if they continue on this path, the boomerang effect is going to be there, and it's going to benefit President Trump, and he's going to be more successful in 2020 for their overreach.
All right. Well, we appreciate you both coming on tonight. Thank you so much, Katrina Pearson and David Bossie. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Well, coming up, will an ISIS bride's attempts to be allowed back into the U.S. succeed? The latest details in this shocking story you need to hear still ahead. Plus, Bernie Sanders raises nearly $6 million in 24 hours. Will socialism pave the way to the White House for the Democrats in 2020? But first, new reaction to the crisis unfolding in Venezuela. Governor Mike Huckabee is here and ready to weigh in next. You won't want to miss it. Justice is back in just a moment. Developing tonight, violent clashes in Venezuela amid a standoff over humanitarian aid. Thousands of protesters take to the streets as tensions reach a crisis level in the country. Here with reaction to that and much more, former governor and Fox News contributor Mike Huckabee joins me now. Governor, Nicolas Maduro today cut ties with Colombia. His thugs in Venezuela have been burning aid trucks with medicine and food that are trying to come into the country on the Colombian border. The White House obviously is watching this very closely. Former Ambassador John Bolton and National Security Advisor John Bolton tweeting, "These 4 Venezuelan military members chose to stand with the people today. We were honored by their commander-in-chief, Juan Guaido, and welcomed by the democratic world. The rest of the Venezuelan military should follow." What he's referring to is that there are now defections from the military, which has been backing Nicolas Maduro at this point. They are now on the side of the president of the United States, and democracies across the world are recognizing Juan Guaido. What is your response to the developments in Venezuela today?
Well, Katie, first of all, it's another collapse of socialism and a reminder that it doesn't work. And ultimately, we see yet another rich nation turned into an impoverished nation because of socialism and corruption. You have to add that in. But we also see what a strong U.S. policy does. Even Jeb Bush today tweeted out commendation for President Trump's handling of the Venezuelan situation. And Jeb is no big supporter of President Trump, so I think that's very significant. But it's a very honest assessment. This wouldn't be happening if it weren't for the very strong policies toward freedom and encouraging the people of Venezuela to take charge. And now seeing these defections, Katie, it is a seminal event there, and it looks like it's unraveling in Venezuela against the regime.
But as we've seen, Juan Guaido, who again is recognized by the United States and other democracies across the world, he's on the front lines at the border in Colombia trying to push this aid through as Nicolas Maduro continues to fire live ammunition at protesters and volunteers who are trying to distribute this aid. And yet we have politicians, some running for president in the United States, Bernie Sanders, saying, condemning Maduro in some way, but not saying that he should go. What is your response to that?
Well, Bernie Sanders has never met a communist he didn't love. I mean, he did his honeymoon in the Soviet Union back in the day. This is a guy who has been captured on video over the past 40 years of praising Fidel Castro, praising every communist leader, and often at the expense of the United States. I'd like to think that there are sane and rational Democrats who recognize that Bernie Sanders cannot represent their views and the views of Americans and the views of traditional Democrats who find those ideas utterly repulsive.
Well, Bernie Sanders, of course, upheld Venezuela as an example of how socialism works. And now that it's completely fallen apart as a result of socialism, he doesn't really want to talk about it. What do you think the outcome is going to be here from a national security perspective for the United States? Because it is getting very violent. Maduro doesn't seem like he's going to go. There are defections from the military there, but it's a very serious, violent situation that could get much worse.
I think ultimately there will be a takeover of Venezuela, if you will, an uprising that will lead to the ousting of Maduro, because the people have seen their lives totally collapse. Their economy is in the toilet. They don't want to live like this. They know what it was like when they had freedom, and now they know what it's like under socialism, and they're rejecting it. They're doing the same thing that people around the world have done, and they're doing it at great expense and at great risk to themselves and their families, which show you the desperation of people who, having tasted freedom, want to enjoy it yet again. And I hope that people will recognize that we're blessed to live in the United States, and frankly, we're very fortunate to have a president who doesn't just walk away and turn a blind eye to the horrors that are going on in the socialist Venezuela, and is supplying help and assistance to try to get that freedom back for the people there.
All right, Governor Mike Huckabee, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
You bet. Good to talk to you, Katie.
All right, Charlie Kirk and Jason Chaffetz still on deck tonight. And next, Bernie Sanders brings his socialist message into the 2020 campaign. Will the second time be a charm? And is he a threat to President Trump? We'll discuss with tonight's political panel next on Justice. Back in a moment.
It was a Muslim or a Mexican or someone black. I feel like the doubters would have supported me a lot much more.
Race, just one of the many parts of Jussie Smollett's story to quickly unravel and blow up in his face. The actor out on a $100,000 bond, charged with felony disorderly conduct for filing a false police report, facing up to 3 years in prison if convicted. And he's been dropped by the show Empire for the final 2 episodes of the season. Here with reaction, former Deputy Assistant to President Trump, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, the author of the book, Why We Fight. So, Dr. Gorka, he's just a greedy, lying con artist, and the media was either too stupid to check the story out, or they didn't want to check the story out because it was too big to fail. How do you see it?
Never let facts get in the way of a good left-wing narrative.
Right.
That's what we saw with the Covington schoolboys. That's what we saw in the reverse with this individual. Look, on the left, reality is optional, Jesse. You know that better than anyone else. The stunning thing is this individual who has been caught on camera with his accomplices buying the material for this fake hate crime, used a check to pay for it, and then what does he do this week? He pleads not guilty. Right. Not guilty.
Right. I love the check, too. It's, what was that? Didn't Jerry Springer pay a prostitute with a check? You never pay a prostitute with a check. You never commit a crime with a check. Yeah, I think Charles Barkley mentioned that on TNT the other day. Let's listen to that.
America, let me just tell you something. What's that? Do not commit crimes with checks. Come on, man. You cannot, if you're going to break the law, do not write a check. Because you're writing a check that what? You're behind cash. Yo, man, you cannot cash up. Hey, get cash, man.
But you know what? It's funny, but it's not, because he knew that the media would buy his hoax. And Robin Roberts at GMA went along with it. Many of the people across cable went along with it. And everybody like you and I were thinking from the get-go, this story doesn't make sense, but we didn't say anything, because if we had said something, we would have been destroyed by the left-wing media as racists and as conspiracy theorists, just for asking questions.
Look, Jesse, I now have a national radio show. I didn't comment on this case until this week because I wanted the facts.
Right.
I didn't jump on some narrative bandwagon. But yes, look, there's two very serious things about this. In the week since this hoax was perpetrated, 31 people were murdered in Chicago. In 26 of those cases, they haven't made an arrest. Not one arrest. In the meantime, 24 detectives were being wasted on this fraud. Secondly, this individual has actually perpetrated a hate crime because he's blamed white Trump supporters. This is a man who is a minority member and a homosexual and is in a TV show, or was until this week. In dozens of countries around the world, this person would never have had the opportunities that he's had in America. In dozens of countries, his sexual preferences would have led to him being a criminal. And in many countries in the Middle East, he would have risked execution just for being a homosexual.
He took for granted everything he had in this country, all the opportunities, and I believe he owes every single one of Donald Trump's supporters an apology. All 60 million of them, because that's who he actually framed. You mentioned earlier, too, you want to wait until the facts come out. The Democrats didn't do it with Kavanaugh. They didn't do it with Covington. They didn't do it with Jussie Smollett. And it's, you know, innocent until proven guilty if you're on their side, and guilty as charged if you're not on their side. And it's totally against what the founding principles of this country are. And it's getting to the Democrats in a lot of trouble, because now the Democratic presidential candidates have fallen for hoaxes, and the media, what little credibility they have, is shot. Give you the last word.
Yeah, just on Friday, Kamala Harris, who originally in a tweet called this a modern-day lynching, she tweeted out a statement on Friday. Nowhere did she apologize for jumping on the bandwagon and call this a lynching. This is a person who thinks she should be the next president of the United States. That's everything you need to know about the left, as my good friend Chris Palmer said.
And she was a prosecutor, so she should know, what to look for when people are perpetrating fraudulent acts. Dr. Gorka, got to run, but as always, I got to run. As always, listen to Dr. Gorka's radio show. You won't be disappointed. All right? Up next, an expert in hate crime hoaxes. He has this huge list. You are not going to believe what he's got.
Nose down first. Authorities say they don't expect to find any survivors. The FAA issued an alert on the flight after it lost contact about 30 miles southeast of George Bush International Airport in Houston. Unrest continues in Venezuela, with protests turning deadly. At least 2 people were killed and 18 injured during clashes between supporters of opposition leader Juan Guaido and embattled President Nicolas Maduro's security forces. Convoys of humanitarian aid were also being denied entry after Maduro ordered the closing of the country's border crossings. I'm Anita Vogel. Now back to Watters World.
The Jussie Smollett hate crime hoax, just the latest in a string of fake crimes unfolding in the Trump era. But hoaxes go way back. Just ask Obama chief strategist David Axelrod.
In Chicago, there was an old tradition of throwing a brick through your own campaign office window and then calling a press conference to say that you'd been attacked.
Here to run us through some of the hate crime hoaxes making headlines, freelance journalist Andy No. So, Andy, you made a lot of news this week because you posted on your Twitter feed all of these hate crime hoaxes going back. There's just dozens and dozens of them. It really picked up, I think, right during the Trump election, but right even for that summer, all the death threats at these Jewish community centers across the country. Everybody blamed Trump supporters. The rise of Trump, this is what we were going to see if Trump were elected. What really happened with those threats, though?
The incident you're referring to was perpetrated by Juan Thompson, a black man who used to be a reporter with left-wing media outlet The Intercept. Now, he has, if you looked on his social media history, he expressed many racial grievances, and for whatever reason, he made many death threats to Jewish institutions across this country, and that was used to, of course, the media used that to blame Trump for creating a so-called climate of anti-Semitism.
Right. So at this point in the summer of 2016, the media is already starting to foment the beginning of the Trump hate crime era, but it was a black journalist, not a Trump supporter, that was calling in these threats. And then November 2016, right after the election, they really start to percolate these hate crime hoaxes. South Philly neighborhood vandalized with pro-Trump, anti-black messages, Trump rules, black bitch spray painted onto cars and homes. That's just one example. What happened there?
Well, it was a black man who was responsible for that. And I think that particular incident highlights that not only are these hoaxes amoral, they're not really good liars. Nobody says Trump's rules, similar to like nobody would say this is MAGA country.
Yeah, I know. Some of these slogans, these things don't come out of the mouths of Trump supporters. Trump rules. This is MAGA country. I mean, alarm bells go off. I mean, I have dozens and dozens of, swastikas being painted, people writing the N-word all over things. And in case after case after case, these people are perpetrating hoaxes, and these are not Trump supporters that are doing it. We're not saying that hate crimes don't exist. They do, and they're horrific, and they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, but fake crimes also need to be prosecuted. In your opinion, and you've studied this and you've seen this, psychologically, why do people commit hate crime hoaxes?
I have not studied this academically, but it's of my view that because I was in university not too long ago, and the prevailing ethos and culture there was that of grievance and victimhood. And I think what we're witnessing now is that this grievance ideology and victimhood culture has leaked out of the academe into mainstream society, culture, and politics. We're seeing it really as a cynical ploy being used particularly by some Democratic presidential hopefuls. I think it's emblematic of an illness in America where we are essentially worshiping victimhood. And I think the lesson to be learned is that to expect more of this, as long as skepticism and caution is demonized and that we are told over and over to always believe an alleged victim. Victims absolutely exist, but case after case, as we had in the past, we had Tawana Brawley.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this culture continuously rewards victims. They can be financially rewarded, awarded in academia, they get fame, everything. And the minute you question that, all hell rains down on you. And it's a sad state of affairs. All right, Andy, got to run. Thank you very much for your reporting.
My pleasure.
Still ahead, a man who had a gun pulled on him for being a Trump supporter. But first, what political slogans are working and which ones are not?
Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. We are building a wall on the southern border. Building a wall. We will build the wall. Build a great wall along the southern border. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall.
Build the wall, make America great again. Political catchphrases can make or break a candidate as a powerful rallying cry. Here to look at the effectiveness of political phrasing, pollster Frank Luntz. All right, Frank, you're the best at this in the business. When the president says build the wall, and he's talking about the wall constantly, is that a good move, or is there another word that you would like him to use?
Well, I don't choose what words he uses. He should know that 41% of Americans want to build that wall. A majority in the lower mid-50s want to build a barrier. Over 70% want a combination of technology and people and some sort of barrier.
So he should be saying build that barrier, build that barrier.
No, but you know what? This is more than an applause line. And if he wants to go from 41% job approval up to 50%, he's got the right idea. But in this case, build a wall appeals to his base, most of the viewers who are watching right now.
Right.
But he could be doing so much better if he expanded the communication.
Okay. Also, a phrase used constantly by the left and the right, collusion, but also the witch hunt, which the president likes to say. Let's listen.
This is a pure and simple witch hunt. Phony witch hunt.
The Russian witch hunt. The witch hunt that's been going on forever. No collusion, no nothing.
Zero collusion. No collusion at all.
Okay. Collusion and witch hunt and hoax. What do you make of those?
Well, I don't think most Americans knew what the word collusion was until about a year ago.
Right.
So this has been very good for America's vocabulary.
Right.
The issue is that these people are putting politics over people. If I were advising him on this, I don't have a better word than witch hunt.
You think witch hunt is the right phrase?
For what he's trying to communicate, I think that works best because we all understand when something is unfair and something is improper.
Okay, good. The Democrats like to say there's going to be a Green New Deal, I guess playing off the old FDR phrase, but then adding green in front of it. How do you think that's working? It's just beginning to start.
I know it's working well. We did a survey on it, and 80% of Americans thought it was a good idea. They have no idea what it is, but a Green New Deal, it works for them. I'm going to give you another example. Medicare for All has over 60% support, only 25% opposition, because the public believes that Medicare works and they want to share, they basically want to share the wealth. So in this case, the Democrats have a very effective labeling of this issue. But when they learn the truth about it, when they learn the details, I think the public will change its mind.
All right. The devil is in the details. All right, Frank, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A Kentucky man held at gunpoint just for wearing his MAGA hat. He joins me next on Water's World. Kentucky couple last weekend after a man allegedly pulled a gun on them at a Sam's Club and threatened their lives simply for wearing their Make America Great Again hats. 57-year-old James Phillips was arrested immediately and charged with first-degree wanton endangerment. The victim, Terry Pierce, joins me now. So, Terry, take us through what happened. You're at Sam's Club, you're with your wife, you got your MAGA hat on. What happened next?
Well, we was walking to the checkout line, and Mr. Phillips was approaching us. I had turned to look at my wife and was talking with her when he flipped us off. And her facial expression changed instantly. Yes, give us a finger. And her facial expression changed instantly, and she said, did he flip us off? And when I spun around, I seen his hands going down with his finger still up. And she said, excuse me, did you flip us off? And he turned around and went into an explicative tirade. Yes, I did, because of those hats.
Wow.
And that's when I decided to confront him about it.
All right, so then it kind of moved out into the parking lot. You were defending your wife's honor. He then allegedly pulled a gun on you?
No, Jesse, actually, it was still inside the store. I had walked around. He was trying to walk away, and I went in front of him, and I put my finger in his face, and I said, what gives you the right to flip me off just because of the hat that I wear? and he started in again. So another little altercation occurred, and that's when he drew a .40 caliber pistol out and stuck it in my face inside the store with numerous people around.
Okay, so there's witnesses. He pulled the gun out, pointed it to your head. What did he say when he pulled the gun out?
He said, "This is a good day for you to die."
Jesus.
And I simply replied to him, "Then pull the trigger. You're either going to pull the trigger or you're going to put the gun down and face me like a man." And he started backing up, and as he was backing up, we're still arguing. He said again, "Yeah, this is a good day for you to die." And I warned him again, because I kept walking towards him. I said, "Then pull the trigger or put the gun down and face me like a man. That's the only two choices you've got."
Wow.
And that's, we kept arguing, and as he backed up, he took the gun and stuck it in the back of his belt, the backside of his belt.
Right.
And one of the management from Sam's Club had stepped around the corner. He said, "Did he pull a gun on you?" And I turned and looked at him. I said, "Yes, he did." And I'm going after him.
All
and when
right.
I turned around,
well,
he was
listen,
gone.
it's amazing that someone has a gun pulled on them simply for wearing a Make America Great Again hat. I assume you haven't been contacted by a lot of the mainstream media reporters. You know, if this had been the other way, you probably would have been on every single TV show. But, you know, no one should be threatened for wearing a political hat on either side of the aisle. I'm glad you and your wife are okay, and hopefully this guy serves some hard time. Terry, thank you very much.
I hope so. Thank you.
Up next, last call.
To rock around